Welcome to Black Spring. And today, looks like we have more calls for transfers of power. Now, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. And I will be taking you to a story that we have from the vetted source, the TNA, in which we have calls that are coming in for nationalizing police. Once again, I'd like to thank everyone for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. Now, we have watched the approval of trade powers being transferred over the last several months with its predecessor, NAFTA, and other global trade deals with China, even as far back as the 1990s. But while you were sleeping, or perhaps finger painting in the local streets, there is a faction of Congress working to nationalize police in the post tensions and response mitigation in the death of George Floyd in May of this year. Now, we've also seen the Minnesota City Council vote to dismantle the citizen police while installing private police at the taxpayer's expense. Now, it appears that Congress and some others are calling to make the police accountable on a federal level, which takes, of course, the power from the cities and states. And ultimately, the power of the people or the local police would be pretty much lost. In fact, I bring you back to a previous story in which earlier this year, Representative Hank Johnson brought a bill to the floor, which was the Police Accountability Act, to make it a federal crime for a police officer to kill someone. The bill would give the Department of Justice the legal authority to file criminal charges against a police officer should the state fail to file such charges. Now, the 11th Amendment specifically provides that any power not delegated to the United States government nor denied to a state by the Constitution is reserved or kept by the states. Now, earlier, Representative Johnson explained why he considered it necessary for a killing by a police officer to be handled as a potential federal crime. Quote, "There is no silver bullet to fix our broken criminal justice system," end quote. Johnson argued that his 3 bills on the subject will, quote, "keep bad officers off the streets and begin the necessary healing process to regain the trust and respect between communities and the police," end quote. So here again, there's one of your congressmen who's created a solution for police brutality or police accountability, if you will. Now, some of the dangers that are cited in this particular article, which is coming from the TNA, the vetted source, the TNA, quote, this comes from the TNA, "We could cite multiple examples of how federal law enforcement has abused American citizens. The, quote, war, end quote, on drugs is an example of how federal law enforcement officials can abuse their power every bit as much as local police officers. If someone objects to the abuse in this, quote, war, end quote, on drugs, he is often accused of being, quote, for drugs, end quote. Numerous drug raids have gone wrong and innocent people have been killed, which should caution any person who wants to transfer such authority to federal officials." In Manchester, New Hampshire, for example, 49-year-old grandmother Lillian Alonzo was shot by an agent of the Federal Drug Enforcement Agency during a raid on her home to locate, quote, drug money, end quote. DEA agent Michael Connolly said his foot got caught in her bedroom door after he kicked it in, causing him to lose his balance, whereupon his Glock 9mm fired and Alonzo was hit. Regardless of the questions surrounding Connolly's story, the point is that the DEA had risked the lives of 3 agents, children inside the home, and an innocent woman simply to retrieve, quote, drug money, end quote. No drug money was ever found. So here again, we have a transfer of power, and we can see samples. Of course, we can find examples throughout history in which federalizing many things or nationalizing, how those things can go horribly unjust and infringe upon the liberties of the citizens. Also, not to mention, we always have these globalists and these technocrats around. In fact, this article states in which, since the case that involved, and since the Ferguson case, which involved Michael Brown, Al Sharpton, around 2014, Missouri riots, he seemed to call for the federal government to take over policing in this country. And of course, you've got the support of the George Soros and all of these elites that want to see America's fundamental structure go into totalitarianism. A Gestapo factor they want to add to America, which would make America certainly less American and less free. Also, Al Sharpton played a pretty prolific role during the Obama administration, in which he was quite a bit of a confidant and frequently in the spotlight during the Obama administration, during the addressing of the systematic racism that permeates our society. So, once again, I'd like to thank everyone for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. Let me know what you think in the comments. Is this the change in public safety you were looking for? Would nationalizing police make cities or states more safe? And as always, I'd like to thank everyone for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. Please like, unlike, subscribe, or if you dare to share and throw that caution to the wind, that helps out with the channelytics. Also, you can make sure you're still subscribed in these technocratic times. And once again, I'd like to thank everyone for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn.